I'm Sarah Clark, coming to you from Hong Kong, and I'm joined by the global head of SuperReturn, Dorothy Kelso. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah.
Let's talk about Africa. You also host an event, a SuperReturn event in Africa. Why is it that investing in Africa, it's fallen out of the headlines? Why is that?
Well, 4 or 5 years ago, Africa was very much in the headlines for private equity because a lot of capital was raised. But funds have really struggled to raise that amount of capital now because they've struggled to retain and attract commercial investors. So we're not talking so much the development finance institutions, but commercial investors such as single-family offices, endowments, foundations. They're not so interested in Africa at the moment, or they certainly haven't been for the last couple of years.
So why has it proven difficult to attract and retain the commercial LPs?
A combination of push and pull factors. So pull factors of the West. It was much easier in some ways to invest in North America and Europe, and they were getting the returns. So why look at a slightly more difficult proposition such as Africa, they would have thought. So pull factors impacted it, but push factors as well, because there were quite significant currency depreciations a few years ago that impacted returns of those that had gone into Africa. So it negatively impacted their views of investing in the continent. And there may also have been an element of people looking for quick wins, because Africa is very much a story of a long-term investment strategy, and some of the investors had a very short-term outlook. So a combination of push and pull factors have impacted the continent.
So looking at those push and pull factors, how relevant are those push and pull factors in the market today?
I think they're increasingly less relevant. So the pull factors of the West have diminished because there are now high valuations in the West and now lower returns, and people actually can't get the returns anymore in the West, so they have to look further afield. So pull factors have diminished, but push factors have also diminished. So the significant currency depreciations are no more. They've stabilized a lot more. A lot of investors now also recognize that Francophone Africa has a different type of currency, is single currency pegged to the euro, so they didn't have the currency depreciations experienced by some of the other countries in Africa. So they have a kind of broader perspective of Africa. They look at it as a diverse continent, not just a one-stop shop in a way.
So what else is attracting the long-term investors to Africa?
Africa is very quietly reforming, continuing to reform its business environment to attract investment. They've stayed very much out of the headlines in terms of global politics, like the US-China trade dispute, for example, and economic growth is 5% plus in the main countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Egypt, Kenya. So, and then demographics, it still has a young population, it still has improving standards of living, which will drive consumer growth going forward, and it's a huge population size. So a lot of positives still there, just perhaps out of the headlines.
Yeah, so what are those attractive investment opportunities then that exist today?
There are some sectors that are really proving attractive. So infrastructure is one of them, both the traditional sectors in infrastructure in terms of roads, ports, bridges, etc., but also the newer infrastructure such as IT and comms, very much around mobile telephony. Energy is also attractive. Again, there's the traditional oil and gas, but also renewables like solar. And then there's obviously tech. So I went on a personal visit to Ghana back in April, and I was amazed by how advanced the mobile payment system are. I mean, I certainly hardly use mobile payments in the UK, but over there, just everybody was being paid, from the person on the market stall to the taxi driver. But I also saw a huge opportunity, it was certainly in the press, about the digitization of government services, things like registering companies. There's huge opportunities in Africa for the governments to digitize. And then just generally, I think a lot of fund managers are looking at permanent vehicles now, which allow longer term holds of investment companies. So you don't have to do a quick flip of investment companies. And so I think a lot of combination of factors is making Africa look more attractive.
Thank you very much, Dorothy Kelso, for joining us.
Thank you.